thank you all for coming.
This is a super turnout. Like, we got so many people in such a small room, so that's great.
So, what is this about? So, I'm not in the product capacity now. This is a community session. We're going to try to interest you guys in some data, in some interesting stats that we got. Basically, we have a database sitting there and accumulating data from hundreds of organizations now, and we would like to share some of the insights with you. But more importantly, we'd like to kind of demonstrate what sort of value can come from this data and get some ideas from you guys on what we can do next. Because I think there's some potential.
So I mean, if you think about it, all of the control customers currently using insights, all of that data that's sitting out in enterprises, the trends that you can track across organizations in regards to software versions, moves in the industry, moves towards cloud, all of these kind of things. And it's a phenomenal amount of data to have available. I mean, there are organizations like Gartner, Forrester, even little things like the state of the industry report that comes out every year from Ruben and those guys who look out and they call customers for data.
So
all here, across a number of geos and a number of customers. So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, so it is sort of a state of some parts of this are sort of like state of virtualization, state of this, state of that. You guys all know that. So the virtual reality project VRC, right? I actually contacted them. We spoke a little bit. The thing is that Project VRC, who knows Project VRC? So you guys have heard about it. So the difference between this and Project VRC is that Project VRC also includes some data about the intentions, right? It's like what are your goals for next year and what are more the priorities. So they went and they surveyed, right? And they asked people. So that obviously adds another dimension, which is very interesting. We're actually looking at more cold machine process session data. Stats. We're not asking any people what is their opinion, what are their goals. We're just looking at cold data, which has its pluses and its minuses, right? But okay, let's dig into this a little bit. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the data set itself. It sits on, it's in production since January. There are a total of 573 organizations. For some of the stats, we're filtering out parts of them. Right, because but for the most of the organizations that we're seeing, you'll see that they're between 10 computers, really small environments, labs, I guess, and the largest ones are in the thousands, right? So it can be 3,000, 4,000 computers, nothing larger than 10,000. So in that range. So everything, all the stats that you're going to see, you can put some kind of a note next to it saying, okay, this might not apply to the entire world. So there's a lot of data here. We're not in any way claiming that this is the reality in the entire world. So just take it with this little note, right? At total numbers, just the impressive numbers are, for example, for processes data, we have about 6 billion processes logged in the database, which allows all kinds of interesting stats. And for user sessions, we have a bit more than 50 million user sessions logged there. So just a simple example of what we did with. Let's start with this actually. Let's start with logon duration. Have you guys read some of the logon duration stuff that we published?
Has anyone seen this before?
Okay, so some of you haven't. So this is nice. Actually, what we were after is a very simple stat, right? The logon duration. How long does it take for a user to get to the desktop or to the published application? So this is, if you want a high-res picture of this, it's online, right? Just search for logon duration insights from 20 million logons, and there's a blog on this with detailed graphs and everything. But the basic question was, how long does it take for the user to log on, right? And this is the percentage of organizations, right? So, and on the right-hand side, you see the slowest ones, right? So, for example, 3% of organizations have logons, average logon duration of more than 1 minute, right? So that doesn't, you know.
It doesn't exactly bode for a great user experience.
Yeah.
But they've probably gone for coffee, so nobody notices.
Yeah, and you have your, for example, 6% of organizations have logon durations under, the average logon duration under 10 seconds, which is nice. This is 45 million logons from 330 organizations. We now have more, but the good news is that the stats don't really change. So we kind of stabilized at this. By the way, the averages for this, the total logon duration process from all that data averaged 27 seconds. So this is sort of a benchmark that we're using, right?
Eugene,
Yes.
when does the logons stop in your measurement?
When does it stop?
Yeah,
Okay.
when is
Okay.
what's the frame?
So as you guys know, we usually
Give out good t-shirts.
yeah.
For the questions.
You did it. So when does the login process stop? So it depends, right? There are two types of logons that we're looking at. One is the published application, and one is the desktop. So for the published application, it's when the published application process is started. So, you know, for us that means that the logon process is finished, and this is now the published application itself. And not the logon process. For the desktop session, it's whenever the start menu is clickable. Right? So not when the Explorer process starts, we're actually looking when the start menu is clickable.
So, yeah, I mean, going for Explorer would be a bad idea, given that, you know, the first start could be running, or any additional process.
That's why I asked.
The start menu.
How this is identified, the start menu is clean with your.
We can maybe let's talk about this offline afterwards. There's some interesting stuff. We researched this for a very long time, and you know we came to a conclusion that maybe this is the best way, because from the user's perspective, that's what I would do, right? When I'm logging on and I want to see if the desktop is ready, I'm clicking the start menu like crazy, right? So that
That's what we're aiming for.
right. So we're breaking down the entire process. We actually have very detailed information about this online, so let's not dig into all the small details here, but the profile, the shell, the group policy, and we have the mysterious other stuff. So you want to say a couple of things about the other phase?
Not really, because there's so much in that interface that could be happening there. It could be ORS sources manager kicking in, it could be you know, AppSense kicking in, it could be any number of items, you know, startup processes running as well. So there's a huge bundle of application items that can be running within that other space. Question.
You put profiles down for 3 seconds, but what types of profile are you looking at there?
Right. So this is actually a great lead into what is meant by other, right? Because if you look at this is again, I'm sorry that it's hidden kind of small here, but maybe we'll do this and it will be a little bit better. So this is the profile load duration. There's nothing important in that side of this graph, so you're not missing anything. But this is actually weird, because what we're seeing, and again, remember, this is millions and millions of sessions, and we get those stats. So what do they mean? It means that 67% of our logins have a very short profile load duration, right? Very short, I mean 2 or 3 seconds, right? 2 seconds in this case. So that doesn't make much sense, right? So we're used to different numbers in reality. So when we are actually looking at the data, we're seeing that from the Windows perspective, the profile load was 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
But people are using all kinds of techniques. People are using profile management solutions.
Mandatory profiles.
Right? Right?
There's many ways to do this, and in order to drill into a specific stat, so say for example, anybody in the house using RES, first place manager. Of those people, keep your hands up. How many of you put your hands down if you're not using mandatory profiles? So straight away we have a deficit between, or even workspace manager configuration. You know, so the granularity of that is open to interpretation in the sense that with one global statistic you can't circle in on the absence of some RES customers. If you do circle in on them, you've then got a completely another or different data set you need to analyze as well. So you kind of have to stay high level with this stuff in order to. So from a load perspective, as the operating system has said, profile load has occurred. But at that point, Citrix Profile Manager might kick in.
Yeah.
Or yes, Workspace Manager might just load the manager profile and start throwing everything on top, or in addition. So it's focusing on what is always going to happen on a Windows desktop, which is the Windows profile itself loading, which is the the native Microsoft handle for it. And then any additional process after that fact will kick in.
Right. So what it does to the stats is actually it moves the profile, the real profile loading, it moves it to the other section. So this is kind of representative of what's really happening in the profile area, right? So this is those numbers are a little bit more like what we used to see, right? So a lot of again, this is a percentage of organizations, so about half have a look at about 10 seconds.
So with that in mind, I mean, the specific point in times references aren't as fundamental to customers at any given point, but the logon duration from start to finish, given that we're tracking the application launch, or the start menu clickable should still be within the bounds of what you'd expect to see, regardless of the other technologies that may be layering on top. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
T-shirts.
by the way, that was a t-shirt worthy question. So, right, so again, from here, one direction in which we can continue and research this is dig into this other area, right? Look into what's actually, because most profile solutions do have some way of reporting when they're done, right? So if we actually look at logs, right, for example, we can know when is it ending, right? And we can kind of dig into those stats a little bit more and demystify this other part. Yes?
Yeah, any plans on integration of like looking at absence, res, or UPM?
That's what I mean.
Drill that down from.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So that's one direction in which we're going to be continuing this part of the research. We're going to be digging into specific solutions, specific like citric problem management, absence, res, and all of that, and we're trying to figure out ways, the best ways to see how. Yeah. So this is about demystifying all this other part because.
So and the key thing to bear in mind as well is this platform is alive not 8 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
So, like to get this data out in 6 months has been has been a big effort from control. But the more data we get in, the better it gets. And as you've seen, what they've done in 6 months has been phenomenal. What they'll carry on to do for the next 6 months, obviously, we've just.
Is there any way you can differentiate between like the log-on time and the organization that it is, like the size of it? Because like the bigger enterprise desktops have a lot more junk in them.
That's I will give you 2 t-shirts.
For answering your question.
That's a wonderful question. I have a nice slide which
I'm not even going to try to explain this slide. There's a data analyst geek inside him just carrying this together.
Yeah. So bear with me. This looks weird at first, but it's actually started. It's from a shooting range. So this is logon duration in seconds, right? By logon duration, in this case, I mean organizational average, right? So we take all the logins we got from a specific organization, we average them, and this is the number, right? So this is the y-axis. X-axis, right? Disregard the minus 10 here. So the x-axis is the percentage of desktop logins, right? So on the leftmost side, those organizations over here have only published applications. Those organizations over here have only desktop logins, right? And all those guys in the middle have a mix of both. Okay? Kind of clear? Okay. The size of the bubbles is the size of the organization. Now, I've thought of all kinds of different ways of what do I mean by size of organization. I think the best way of measuring the size of organization for this case is the number of logins per day. Okay? Make sense? Yeah. So I don't want to count the number of endpoints or the number of named users concurrently. Yeah, I mean, if you're a big shop, you probably have a lot of logins per day. So just to give you the scale, so this huge bubble over here is an organization that has 93,000 logins per day.
But what if you have a company where they go from terminal to terminal because I know where they just get locked off in the other one, log in and off or something.
This is actually helping.
Good spot.
And then maybe in the number of unique users.
Yeah, so we can do, obviously that's one good
Sorry.
No more questions.
first row exits.
Ben has a question.
Yeah. So what sort of story can we tell with this? A couple, right? So those are suggestions. You're welcome to challenge the suggestions. But those are a couple of stories we can tell with this. First of all, it's kind of obvious from this that the bigger shops tend to use published applications more and desktop less, right? The bigger bubbles are over here. And this line actually shows the difference between desktop and published application average logon time, which is 22 seconds for published applications and 31 seconds for desktop.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's by definition there has to be different because there's another phase there.
There's so much more going on.
Yeah, but it's kind of trivial, but it's nice to see the data, right? Another thing that you can see here is that the smaller shops, all of those using the desktop, VDI and published desktops and servers, all the smaller shops are over here. One tendency you see here is that they're more scattered like this, right? They have more variance. So that means that there's a lot of room for improvement. You can work on optimizing a lot, and some of them are over here. That means this organization over here, about 1,000 logins per day, has an average logon duration of more than 80 seconds. That's average, right? So there's a lot of room for optimization over here.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, that on its own is worth a case study, and that's just a very small sample of all the data that's actually sitting in insights already, so it's fascinating.
So, questions about this? Right. So I don't know. I just I think this is a nice way of looking at all those different shops and comparing them. And if you can think of other ways of plotting, the number of distinct users or concurrent users, that's one way, one different way that we can look at this.
Even at a glance, we can deduce from this it takes 50% longer to launch a published desktop than it does a published desktop.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know where those shops are located geographically?
Yes, I do.
Is there any trend in there where you can see, like for example, in the USA we see different results than in Europe?
I looked at this, but at the time I actually looked at this question, so the question is great, right? But at the time I looked at this question, it wasn't representative enough. So we were trying to explain noise, basically. The difference between organizations in the US and Europe, in this case, it wasn't really systematic. So the organizations themselves were very different. But I wouldn't say that there was a trend between the US and Europe. But I will be looking at this again, right? We will be looking at this again. The more organizations you get from different locations, the better in this regard, right? Because you get more representative samples, and then just the number of samples is not enough. You have to have enough in each category. And one, geography is one, industry is the other, right? So when we have enough organizations from every industry, from every geography, that would be awesome, right?
And just bear in mind, as I said, it's only available 6 months and already up to 500 and something organizations, so the adoption is
This is over 300, right? Because all kinds of filtering that we did, we can discuss later about this. Right. So let's go forward. We actually this is experimental, right? This is one experiment we did. We tried to measure how long are user sessions, right? So just measure from the beginning of the session till the end, right? I don't know. I can think of a couple of uses for that. Maybe you guys can think of other uses, but it's just nice to know the stats, right? So 76% of desktop sessions are shorter than 1 hour. Okay, makes sense?
No.
makes no sense.
Okay, let's talk about it. Why? Why not?
You log once a day, and then you log off at the end of the day.
Right.
Log on. As in sense, this isn't tracking how many sessions you actually initiated.
But the session lasts all day, right?
So according to this, there's a lot more short sessions than we might think, right? So we're looking at it. I filtered out all the anomalies and all the stuff where there's a session that just gets lost or disconnected. I'm measuring from login to log off, to the actual log off.
Real log on.
Right?
Yeah.
To the real log off, right?
Is this data skewed by this big healthcare customer though?
Yeah, exactly, my question.
Great question, great question. I actually filtered this particular organization out for this analysis. And this is not because, and by the way, but this trend with short sessions, right? So let's dig into the 1 hour, right? Under 1 hour, those 76%. This is the way it looks. So 34% of the total is less than 5 minutes. So a third of all sessions are less than 5 minutes.
Are you counting fast logins, so run-as, because that doesn't work.
Sorry?
So
Fast
yes,
login,
so
so
yes,
run out
absolutely.
goes
So
in
Citrix's cheating method is
Yeah.
included in this, but it only disconnects the session. It does not log them off. So the session will sit there idle. So it's not being caught by this in the sense that it's smaller by 5 seconds. Well, we presented this data back because we have looked at this over and over again, and I don't fully understand why yet. But you can see it as you drill into this.
One of the reasons that I wanted to include this is to ask the question, like what are the different reasons, and we can talk, we don't have time to dive into all the possible reasons now, but we're really open to suggestions of ideas that you guys might have. Why is it like that? I mean, it's not,
Can you see how many applications they start in that short time?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So maybe there's definitely more interest in this. So maybe we should drill into this further and maybe wrap a blog post around it.
One suggestion would be license for a particular application that only allows 120 users. So as soon as there's 2 minutes waiting time, obviously it's kick them off.
That could be it, yeah.
So it's
Could also be from interest if the user calls the service desk in this 1 hour and the service desk tells him to restart your session.
Yeah, okay, so maybe a bad health situation where the user has that problem and needs to log off and log back in.
Yep. Could be all those cases.
And we'll talk about the overall health of
each of those cases.
What would be nice to know is what the concurrency rate in that environment is.
Yeah, so those are all kinds of different environments. We can actually separate them all. So the awesome.
Basically, we just want to know everything.
So this is great because
sounds easy.
This sounds like a really interesting blog post.
Yeah.
Sorry, this goes here.
It's bad if you user having to double click, so maybe this double session started a lot of.
That is very good point. Double click and publish apps and then.
Amazing. So, but let's if we're looking at each of those cases, imagine that we're able to actually detect them and actually tell the story to the actual organization and say, hey, you guys have a lot of this. So the first, one of the first experiments we're starting with this is detecting abnormal off-chart values, right? So say you have very slow logons. Some of your logons are very, very, very slow, right? Or some of your sessions are very, very, very short. That looks like an anomaly, right? Even if you're not looking at the reasons for that, you might want to look into it.
So
right?
Another thing to bear in mind as well, with obviously with CPK and max numbers of sessions, as you pointed out there already, it may also highlight that there are a lot of shops who are suffering disconnected and not able to get back to their desktops as well. And CGP comes up in this presentation later as people misconfiguring stuff all over the shop. So it could very well be the case that this is just they are not actually fully logging in, but they're being stopped by the terminal server or whatever because they have a session on this class. So, sorry, question.
You should the session length, is that the actual duration of the session, or is it until it's
duration session?
Duration of session. It's time to log off. To the Now, the cool thing, I didn't have enough time to dig into this, but we have the data for the duration of idle, active, and disconnected. So we can actually partition it into the activity, and we can analyze the patterns of user activity, which is really cool, but I didn't have enough time to do this for this.
So we want to get bogged down on this.
Next time.
Loads of other stuff to show you.
Right. So there's all kinds of stuff like
one
that.
I wanted to drill in recently to was versions of Office because I have a customer currently moving, and long story short, typewriters, but how many users, how many organizations from typewriters? Unfortunately, I've been working with the migrated from them, but what version of Office is out there? What I found really interesting was completely end of life, and there are a good 20% of people still really using it for whatever reason. Office 2010 is definitely the most prevalent versions. I was surprised to see 10% adoption of Office 2016, given that we're focusing on VDI internal services environments, and it hasn't really been hotfixed to the greatest lengths yet. There's also a 20% performance penalty up there straight away from moving over. So I just thought this was a really interesting graph to be able to pull out information based on Office straight away to see who it is there. And that 1% is phenomenal. If I was to guess, this is probably running an app fee for one bad spreadsheet some person in finance wrote about 12 years ago, but there it is, Office XP.
So actually the thing that you just said about the the performance penalty, right? The reality is that we actually have all the performance data behind this. So we can test this and we can actually show the performance penalty. So again, not enough time to show you, but to do this analysis.
Why don't you just open up the portal so we can fiddle around?
Buy some licenses, please.
More data you might get some answers then.
More.
Not for me.
You already has a t-shirt.
So actually, if you look at the number of processes, this is just one last thing about Office and we'll move on. So before we look at the number of organizations, but if we actually look at the number of processes for each Office version, the picture is a little bit different, right? So a lot less, almost no. And so it's actually skewed towards the organizations when you have a lot of activity and a lot of processes running, right? So that's how the 2013 and the 2010 get this lion's share, and all the rest.
So the largest organizations could be are using these versions, whereas the smaller shops are on it, which would be unanimous to trend, given that these guys are normally quite far behind smaller organizations who potentially could move in a more agile way with a smaller user base.
Right. And this is not zero, this is lower, a little bit.
Oh, okay. That was just
a little bit lower. I just rounded.
How can it be zero?
No, I just rounded it.
He would have loved loads of decimal points, but he had to fit into
Yeah. Makes me wonder what the real amount of Office XP users is then. If it's 48 million users, so it's 1%.
Yeah, we can give you the actual number. So it's right here. So what about other software?
So this is the fun bit. So we have a collection of the data set here, and rather than put it up on the slides, we can actually show you in real time. So for argument's sake, let's look at AppV 4.6 is currently end of life. Many organizations stuck on the migration to version 5 is a pain in the ass. How many people are currently running out of support?
Terrible.
I'm sorry. How many people are currently running out of support? Well, out of the installations, there's still 40% running 4.6, where 60% now are on version 5. You can see that 29 organizations are still using 4.6, 71 have moved over now to 4.5, and then the percentage of organizations are reflected there as well. But that's just one example of the kind of data set that you can gather from the user base that control we're using, which is targeted at RDS and VDI environments. Another great one is
what REST assets?
REST assets. So
assets here.
So we have 4,648 instances of AppSense running in 35 organizations, whereas over here in Workspace Manager we have 9,492 machines. So in theory, we have more devices in the database running Workspace Manager than we have with AppSense, but we have more organizations using AppSense than RDS Workspace Manager. So what does that say? That probably says smaller houses maybe are using AppSense, whereas bigger houses. But I don't want to cause a fight between AppSense and RDS, that's not what we're interested in. They're both very good products, and I don't want to be shocked when they leave. So it's just an interesting part, again, that you can look at what UVM solutions they're using. And there are other vendors like Liquidware and all the rest who are in there too, they just pop out the top of the head as we saw.
Very few organizations doing stuff in the cloud out of those, right?
So only 4% are in
AWS.
EC2.
What is that figure? The mouse is right open.
Oh, I'm the mouse.
Oh, thank you.
No, that's shit, sorry.
Sorry, that's just...
Go away. Anyway, so another one that we thought was interesting was, Citrix statistics about Zen server being more 100% desktop than vSphere. I was dubious. So we looked at our customer base to see what was the percentage of people using vSphere versus the percentage of people using Zenserver, and how many people had both, because the results were a little different. So do we have, I'm just trying to find it here. So we have, no, it's view. Where is vSphere? So we had 42,000 instances of VMware vSphere VMs running in 342 organizations, which made up 82% of the data set. Whereas we had only 8,642 instances of Zenserver. So
it's not Zenserver Plus, it's Zenserver VMs.
Zenserver VMs in 127 organizations. Well, that's that 30%. So if you look at these two, we've now got 112%. So there has to be customers running from hubs.
Yeah.
Is Hyper-V not?
So we do detect Hyper-V, but I chose to exclude it from this set because up until version 6, which is just not released yet, we didn't support monitoring Hyper-V environments, so I wouldn't want to give like an unfair stat.
No,
so in next round, it'll definitely be there.
Right. So as you can, as you're starting to understand, I filtered a lot of this, but I was trying to be fair in filtering this because so that there's not. Vendor-wise, I just, I'm trying to be careful, not putting head-to-head comparisons. You can get tons of numbers on Zenserver versus vSphere, but I think it's interesting. Another thing that I'm planning to do with this is correlating all kinds of different software. So it's interesting to know by vendor which software packages go together more often, right? It's interesting, right?
Couldn't agree more. And even then, just to highlight, there are still 19 organizations out there running Zenap5. So it's another interesting data set in a sense that completely ends the end of life, probably sitting as a compatibility farm out there somewhere, but we'll talk a little bit about the health of the environment. So we'll get some event logs.
Right, let's get to that because there's a lot of stuff in there. We'll just wait for Claire to
So what we did was, another thing that Control gathered is event logs. Hundreds and thousands and millions of event logs, 10 million events in 403 organizations were collected. And we decided we'd trend the event logs to see which organizations have the most, which event logs come up most frequently in all the organizations.
So those are basically the most common. Those I'm so sorry about this. The resolution is 4 pixels by 6 pixels.
Well, look, we'll actually step through these specifically now in a minute. But I mean, it's what I've done is I've gone through this data set of all the event logs, and I've separated it out into 2 categories: things to ignore and things to stop being stupid. So there are obviously spurious event logs there that are going to come up time and time again and aren't necessarily an issue. So this kind of graph you can completely ignore. Like the decom RMS. So decom as a whole is just awful, and it loves to generate loads of event logs. And
it's the absolute champion. That's decom errors are always the top all over across the board, everywhere.
And then you've got S channel as well. So whenever your Windows device tries to create a secure channel with a domain controller or any kind of Windows infrastructure, basically Microsoft's own implementation of SSL in the background. Whenever that has an issue, you're going to see an S channel log. Most of the time, just deploy a CA in your environment, please. It's surprising how many people don't have CAs in this day and age, even if it's just an active directory role, but that can help immensely. Kerbos 4, the whole packet modified from the computer name as we send back and forth. Most of the time, it's just DNS or load balancing kind of stuff that's generated as event logs. So they can be ignored a lot of the time. Reliability server 110 is the whole a CHP client tries to reconnect to a session that's no longer available. Basically, they put their laptop to sleep or something, and then they try to come back into the session that wasn't there anymore. So most of the time those can be ignored, but don't ignore session reliability as a whole, because we'll cover that in the stop being stupid category. And then group policy as well, just to do with the Active Directory issues. I can't talk to a domain controller, or maybe the machine password hasn't been loaded in on time before it does, but within about 5 minutes, chances are it's going to fix itself on the domain. So you can generally ignore those event logs if you do have a PDS environment and it's not logging all day, it's just logging in the morning, as an example. But I love the Stop Being Stupid site, because this shows the general health and well-being of Zen environments out there. Of the top 10, 15 event logs we were seeing, application 1000, 1002, your applications are crashing. This could be ASLR, this could be bad applications, this could be any plethora of reasons, but it's right up there at the top. So where your applications are crashing is probably the first question you should be asking yourself. Folder redirection, I mean, look, if you're going to redirect folders, at least make sure your file server is up. It's a no-brainer. That eventually crops up over and over and over again. Similarly, this one is a pet peeve of mine and every customer I go to. It's to do with the RDP. When an administrator logs into a XenApp server or a Horizon server, but they have printer mapping enabled, and all of a sudden they start installing print drivers on their terminal server without even realizing it. Dear God, guys, just create a group policy, no RDP printer mappings from the administrator machine. Saves you so much hassle in the long run, and it's not that bad. Metaframe events 1116 and 1106 to do with client printer creation, drivers not available, the print service, the CP, SVC, Citrix print service probably doesn't have the right permissions, all that kind of stuff. Your users are complaining about printing in XenApp for a reason. It's not always just Citrix fault, you probably do it yourself. Reliability server, that one crops up all the time. That's more kind of the XenApp days. XenApp is still here, or XenApp 65 is still here, XT hasn't gone away, but session reliability is probably broken in your environment and your users are probably complaining about it because it's cropping up all the time. And then of course the Windows user profile service. Temporary profiles are being logged on with and something is broken. All the common things users complain about all the time, and it's right there in front of you in the event logs. To be looked at, and it's only when you gather up so many different organizations' event logs you see this stuff is still a problem. Organizations are taking good care of it, and maybe it's just me being a consultant who got out to customers kind of tutting and tisking at them when I see this kind of stuff in the event logs. But it's clear that customers are either not aware of it, not working on it, or they're just accepting that there are issues and moving on with it. So it's fascinating to be able to drill through these kind of statistics, because I mean. Taking decom there, you've got decom here, you've got decom, sorry, we'll drill that. So like application errors, so of all of the errors you're getting, your applications are crashing the most. First of all, decom is covering off at least 4 in the top 10. Secure channel issues are up there in the top 10. Your folder redirection is the 5th highest. So I mean, if you're redirecting folders because the user needs it, put your file server up, please. And then of course metaframe events are in CGP and RDP service and all this kind of stuff. 40 million, wasn't it?
So this is actually a data set, 10 million events and 400 organizations. And we've been gathering this for a little bit longer than the Insights portal is up, right? So this is a more, we can partition this by time, which also gives some interesting stats. And I actually think that one of the interesting things we can do with this is correlate this with the other slides, right? So think about the organizational size and the log on duration and all the distribution between idle and active and disconnected session times and performance and Office versions and other software versions. Think of starting to, because data is awesome and data is interesting, but what actually makes data into information and actionable insights is when you start connecting the dots, when you start looking at, okay, this error maybe appears more when there's a certain software installed. Maybe this error appears more in a certain operating system, right? And all the data is there. All we need to do is kind of dig in and I'm really the one message that I'd like to put. Thank you. The one message I'd like to put forward here is that any idea about and as specific, the more specific the better, right? If you want to test a specific hypothesis, specific thought, specific idea that you have, by all means, shout it out on Twitter. Just talk to us and we'll try to look at it, right?
Can we, do we have this deck available?
It's going to be available with all the text from the
so even just focusing back on that.
3 or 4 months from now, everything will be
For the application hero, do you have the raw data, that you have the process name? Which would be really...
Yes.
But focusing back on that point we made earlier, focusing back on that point, everybody was confused about earlier on around desktops less than a minute. But straight away, we're seeing there are metaframe events around reliability of the service. There's issues with RDP itself. There's issues with folder redirection. redirection, there's issues with Windows profile servers. These event logs are suggesting something that may be causing that log off and log on scenario as well. So yeah, I'd absolutely echo what Eugene says there. It's nice to have the statistics, but with insights we're actually going to be able to connect the dots as this grows and proceeds. So with 6 months, I think the guys have done a phenomenal job of getting the data ready and getting it usable, getting it interesting, and being able to present this kind of stuff back to the community for absolutely nothing. And I'd say watch the space for the next 6 months because the reports are going in nearly bi-weekly, so it's fascinating to see. And of course, with the log-on times and all the rest, in Insights itself, if the customer is a control customer, they can benchmark themselves against the rest of the organizations. So what I love about that is when you go into a customer and a user says, my log-on is slow. You go, right. And you look at it, and it was 20 seconds, and you go to the control benchmark and it says, it's 20 seconds, and you go, no, it's not. This average says it's actually 30 seconds. You got 20. You only got 20 seconds. It's fine. Leave it alone. Because I mean, those KPIs are so difficult to generate.
Yeah, but this will give us the argument within the organizations to free up time to troubleshoot it or to at least analyze it.
Exactly. So yeah.
Yeah, administrators are so busy nowadays. They don't have the time to look into the real problems or analyze the entire chain. From the end user to the office application.
No, that's great because one of the things we already started researching, and I think that's one of the more interesting ones, is comparing performance for applications between different organizations. So just a small story about this. Okay, so what we did was we looked at CPU consumption by different processes, right? So I sorted by the amount of savings that you could achieve if you brought your CPU consumption for a specific application to the global average, right? So say you have some application that's performing at an average of 10% CPU, and in the rest of the world is running it at 2% CPU. You could save a lot of CPU cycles if you analyze this and potentially, found some problem and maybe decreased your CPU usage if there's a systematic problem that's going on there, right? So one small story about this, the one that popped up on the top was for a specific organization. It was IMJDPSVR something exit. It's a process that's responsible for language selection. The language selector, right? So in one of the organizations it was consuming 12% CPU on average, and for the world the benchmark is less than 2%, I think. So it was dramatically higher. So we actually talked to that customer. Asked them what could be the reason for that, and the reason in their case was. They installed all the languages in their multinational corporation. They installed all the languages on all the workloads, right? So, and obviously not all the users needed all the languages.
Good job.
They did, right? So, but the point is that behind every difference like that, every phenomenon like this, there's a story there, right? Sometimes the story is a problem that can be solved. Sometimes it's something that you cannot do anything about, but it's nice to know that you're doing differently from the rest of the world. The point is, listen, today we're consuming stats on a daily basis, all the time. Sometimes we're not even consciously aware that we're consuming statistics. For example, the simplest example is blood tests, right? We're looking at blood tests. The doctor is actually telling us that we're off the chart on this and we're off the chart on this. This is based on statistics. It's not based on, nobody knows what's good and what's bad except when compared to the rest of the world, to the norm, right? Fuel consumption, your energy bill, right? Shows you how are you doing in terms of, comparison to the world. So what we're trying to do here is sort of create a database where everything can be compared to the rest of the world, and sometimes even to your environment. Just comparing within the environment sometimes produces even more interesting results sometimes than comparing to the rest of the world. So that's another direction. Again, lots of stuff to talk about. We're still here for the rest of the day, for the rest of tomorrow, and and further. Really appreciate the turnout. Thank you all for coming. And what we really appreciate is more and more ideas, right? And again, the more specific you can get, the better, right? Because looking at everything is awesome, but it's a little bit hard. So,
Not enough time.
right.
Yeah, so yeah, reach out to us, let us know what you want to see next, because this is going to become a rolling event on looking at this kind of data going forward. And the one key one I want to look at is application outcome, which we'll be looking into 6.
Yep.
So that's going to be another KPI we'll be able to deliver soon. So that's it, we're way out of time. Thank you very much. And,